Get ready for it!
For 500 years, an evil emperor by the name of Arthur Gaz-Trabant ruled his empire in a stern manner, conducting various abominable things to his own citizens. 5 years ago, within the normal time frame, 8 brave warriors stood up against his leadership and finally defeated the tyrannical emperor. They scattered his remains all over the empire, never to be recovered ever again. The empire remained at peace until his daughter, Chaika Trabant, decided to gather the remains of her late father to give him a befitting burial. Things take a dark turn though as Chaika returns to the empire and is found by those who wished she was dead and forgotten. In the first scene, Chaika faces a demon who tells her her destiny as the successor of her father's empire. Chaika leaves her father's castle and wanders the forest nearby with a coffin on her back. She comes across a good-for-nothing loser named Toru, who's jobless and roaming around the forest looking for money. The two have a rather odd introduction, and Chaika tells Toru she's on her way to Delcerant town but got lost along the way. Toru makes a deal to take her to the town if she agrees to buy him breakfast. As Chaika contemplates taking the deal, Toru hears a monster's chant near them. He quickly holds Chaika and runs to the edge of a cliff. They jump off the cliff and land in the river below. Thinking they've lost the monster, Toru and Chaika take a break on the riverbank to rest. Toru keeps recounting how much of a loser he is and just stares at the sky. Chaika opens the coffin and brings out some mechanical parts. She tells Toru to buy her time while she arranges the proper parts to build a magic sniper gun. Toru stands up and activates his magic power right around the time the monster horse finds them. While Chaika builds her gun, Toru fights the demon horse. When she's done, Chaika says the spell and aims her gun at the horse. In one single shot, she kills the horse. Now that the battle is over, Toru deactivates his powers and returns to his boring self. Chaika gets very happy to see that Toru isn't a total loser. She happily asks him to show her the way to town and agrees she'd buy him food. After they leave, a bald-headed man checks on his demon horse and wonders who helped Chaika kill it. Apparently, he's been following Chaika for a while now. Chaika and Toru eventually get to a diner in town to chow down some food. As Toru eats his food like an animal, his adopted sister with anger issues, Akari, comes by and smashes the whole place. Why? Simply because her deadbeat brother wasn't giving her enough attention. Akari manages to chase all the customers away after destroying the entire place. Since they're both broke, Chaika helps them settle the owner. Soon, the trio is together contemplating their next move. Chaika employs both siblings to accompany her on her search for her father's remains. Toru and Akari have no choice but to accept her job offer. Elsewhere, Alberic Gillette meets with one of the heroes who took down the Emperor, Count Abarth, to get the article he retrieved from after defeating the Emperor. Abarth asks him what he wishes to do with such material, but Alberic refuses to divulge the information. Abarth sees Alberic out and goes into his mansion to check out the article, which turns out to be the remains of the late Emperor Gaz. Alberic gets back to his team to discuss the absurdity around Abarth's mansion. Something was weird about the man, and they couldn't figure it out. At that moment, Akari discusses with Toru the new girl, Chaika. They wonder whether or not they should trust her with their lives. Toru tells her not to worry, that he's made his decision to help her on her journey as long as she has money. Late in the night, Toru, Akari, and Chaika infiltrate Abarth's mansion. Seeing as the mansion isn't that heavily guarded, the trio breaks into it easily. Count Abarth hears some noise in his attic and wakes up immediately. He catches Toru sneaking into the center of his mansion and attacks him using wizard magic. Akari and Chaika rush in to help Toru but are trapped in Earth's magic. Abarth, however, stops his attack after seeing Chaika, who he thought was dead, alive and well. Still shocked from seeing Chaika, Abarth lets his guard down and allows Toru to escape with Chaika. When they're gone, Abarth makes the decision to destroy Chaika once again. Toru rallies up with Akari to plan how to get to the center of Earth's mansion. They decide to split up and find the article while he himself fights Abarth. They split up and Toru finds Abarth lurking somewhere in the corridors. He activates his magic powers, the Iron Blood transformation, and faces Abarth again. Abarth sends an explosive magic force towards him, but Toru dodges it. Following that attack, Abarth sends his knives flying towards Toru, but Toru still manages to keep him busy. All the while, Akari and Chaika eventually get to the center of the mansion. They find a secret door in the room's mirror and use a magic spell to open it. Inside the door lies one of Emperor Arthur Gaz's hands. Akari is about to destroy it, but Chaika begs her not to do so, and that's what she was after in the first place. In the meantime, Toru keeps making futile attacks toward the Count. He decides to do a sneak attack on the Count. Again, this backfires on him as the Count sees him coming. In a last-minute effort to capture the Count, Toru leads him to the living room and ties a fishing line to the chandelier on the ceiling. A Barth approaches him and has the normal anime chit-chat with him before continuing their fight. Toru allows the Count to land his attacks on him so he doesn't suspect a thing. When the Count gets into the trap, Toru activates it. He cuts the line to the chandelier and suspends a Barth in the air. At about that time, Akari and Chaika arrive with Gaz's hand. Toru joins up with them and together, they sneak out of the mansion with Gaz's hands. When they're out of harm's way, Toru asks Chaika about who she really is. Chaika refuses to say anything. Instead, she reaches into her coffin and brings out some coins to pay them for their service. Toru is about to collect when he notices an arrow flying straight toward them. He gets Chaika out of the way and faces Alberic and his men who appear from behind. Alberic asks him why he's attached to such a girl, but Toru says he's just doing the job he was paid for. Alberic proposes to pay him a better sum if Toru can leave the girl and go his merry way. Fearing the unspeakable things Alberic could do to Chaika, Toru and his sister decide to save Chaika. They throw a smoke bomb and escape to hide somewhere else. Toru takes Gaz's hand and runs to a bridge. One of Alberic's men follows him to the bridge and attacks him. Without activating his powers, Toru takes care of him and retrieves the article. Just as he's about to leave, reinforcements arrive and trap him at the bridge. Alberic asks him one more time to release the girl and the article to him. Toru refuses to do so, so Alberic tells him Chaika's true identity. He then tells Toru that he'll be causing a war between the nations in the Empire if he refuses to surrender Chaika and the article. Toru tells him that war is exactly what he wants, and he'll do anything to make that happen again. At that time, Chaika activates a blinding light from her sniper gun and gives Toru time to escape. Toru and the two ladies escape to a small house in the woods. There, they make the decision to guard and protect Chaika forever. Chaika opens up to them and says she's been searching for her father's remains so as to give her father a befitting burial. Then, she thanks them for helping her and calls it a night. The next day, Chief Conrad, another one of the 8 heroes, gets word about the recent attack on Count Abarth's mansion. He tells his assistant that he wants no part in the matter, and she relays the information to the council. Meanwhile, Toru and his people continue their journey to their next destination through the forest. After trekking for a while, Toru and his people join a wagon taking people to the town of Ipsum. The passengers keep staring at the coffin Chaika was carrying and think they're bringing a bad omen to their town. When the trio arrives at Ipsum, people keep staring at them. To avoid attracting too much attention, Toru buys a muslin cloth and covers the coffin with it. A few moments later, Toru asks Chaika what their next mission would be. Somewhere else, Alberic finds out his request for reinforcements from Conrad was denied. He sucks it up and holds another meeting with his team. They all figure out Toru and Chaika's location and assign Vivi to capture them. That afternoon, Toru, Akari, and Chaika are seen having a hearty lunch in one of the restaurants around town. Toru gets surprised at Chaika's nonchalance about her situation and asks her why she's like that. Chaika just keeps eating her food and leaves all the serious talk to Toru and his sister. Toru wonders where the rulers of the town of Ipsum lived. The waitress, who is serving them, cuts in and tells them nobody knows where the ruler lives. However, she tells them that there are rumors that the ruler of their town is a dragoon cavalier who lives somewhere in the mountains. Toru thanks her for the information and leaves the restaurant with his sister and Chaika after settling the bills. Right around the corner, Vivi and Zeta, two of Alberic's henchwomen, manage to track Toru and his people to the exact restaurant they just ate at. They find out they couldn't have gotten that far away, so they rush into the busy town to find them. Meanwhile, Toru and the ladies find Alberic's wagon around town. They immediately rush and hide somewhere hoping nobody found them. Unfortunately for them, someone did. The kid, who Chaika recognizes as her collaborator, introduces himself as Chaika's informant and collaborator. Chiaka gives her people the OK signal, so they listen to all he has to say. The informant gives them information on the ruler of the area, Dominika Skoda, the Dragoon Cavalier, and tells them where she lives. After that, he disappears and the trio get on their merry way. They walk a few kilometers into the forest until they come across an old vehicle in the middle of nowhere, just like Guy had informed them. Chaika immediately starts fixing the vehicle and gets it running before nightfall. When it gets dark, Toru and the ladies make a fire near a river to settle for the night. Chaika tries using magic to cook their dinner but ends up burning all of it. Nonetheless, the trio still settles down to eat the burnt chicken like that. While eating, Toru gets motivated and tells the ladies he'd be taking charge once they get to Dominica's castle. Akari appreciates his sudden bravery and tells them about the scary nature of the dragoons to prove her point. Alberic hosts another meeting with his people in his wagon. This time, they talk about all the false Chaikas they've captured in the past and keep wondering whether or not this Chaika is real. In the meantime, Chaika drives Toru and Akari in the old vehicle all the way to Dominica's mansion. On the way, Toru asks her how she'd escaped Gaz's mansion. Chaika tells him she currently has no memory of her life after the war on her father. Toru apologizes for prying into her life and keeps quiet. Just then, Akari tells him about the infamous monster Orthros, known to lurk around that part of the forest to attack whoever is traveling through. Almost immediately, an entire pack of Orthros attacks the trio and manages to subdue Toru. Just as he's about to give up, a knight in shining armor, Dominica Skoda, steps in to fend off the Orthros. Dominica uses her magic powers to fend off the Orthros and saves Toru and the ladies. Once all the Orthros are gone, she introduces herself to the crew and comes off as a nice and hospitable person. She invites Toru and his people to her mansion to stay in the meantime so they could continue their journey the next day. Toru and the ladies appreciate her hospitality and follow her to her mansion. When they get there, they find out Dominica is quite the loner as there was nobody there living with her, not even maids or guards. Dominica asks to know a little more about them, but Akari lies and tells her a totally fake story about her and her adoptive brother. Dominica comes to understand that Toru and Akari, despite being siblings, are hopelessly in love with each other. Akari also tells her that Chaika is their offspring. Since such love was forbidden in their lands, they became travelers searching for a place where their love could be accepted. After hearing their sob story, Dominica lets them stay in a room in her mansion. Soon, Toru and the ladies are in their room. They become very curious and decide to check around the mansion. They get to the kitchen first and find the whole place covered in cobwebs. Apparently, nobody's been there in years. They leave the kitchen and get to the yard. There, they find an image of Dominica Skoda projected from a magic projector. After confirming that the mansion is truly empty, they get back to their room. Toru and the ladies are confused about their manner of approach towards Dominica Skoda. They don't want to fight her since she's been nothing but good to them. Toru tells Chaika to trust him as he thinks of a plan to get Gaz's remains without spooking their host. Chaika leaves things to Toru and heats up her hot tub for a bath before bed. Akari joins her and washes Chaika's hair as she helps Chaika understand Toru's decision. The next day, Dominica treats her guests to a nice breakfast. Chaika happily eats her food while Toru keeps wondering about the best way to confront Toru. He summons the courage and asks Dominica about Gaz's remains. Dominica tells him she does have some of his remains and asks him what he wishes to do with them. Toru tells her he only wants to fulfill the wishes of someone dear to him. Dominica gets a bit violent and draws her sword. She challenges Toru to a fight. If he wins, he gets to take the remains. Toru asks for some time to prepare for the fight and Dominica lets him return to his quarters. While he and Chaika discuss their battle strategy, Akari sulks in one corner of the room. Toru asks her why she's like that. Turns out Akari is jealous of Chaika. She tells Toru he's been giving Chaika too much attention lately and she didn't like it. Toru tells her there's nothing attached to his relationship with Chaika and that he just wants to help her out. A few hours later, when it's dark, Akari and Toru face Dominica in the front yard. Dominica gets very excited and draws her sword to fight the two of them. Toru also activates his Iron Blood transformation magic and gets into his battle stance. Recently, Toru found out the person posing as Dominica is an imposter and not the real Dominica. He gets to the fight hoping to expose the person. When the fight begins, Toru and Akari keep leading Dominica to the mansion's yard where the magic projector is. Toru knocks the magic projector off the stand and confirms his suspicion. He asks the imposter where Dominica is, but the imposter keeps on fighting him. Chaika finds a good vantage point for her sniper shot and shoots an exposure shot at the imposter. The exposure magic reveals the actual person or thing posing as Dominica. Turns out the Dragoon Dominica had signed a contract with was the one posing as her. Toru manages to defeat the Dragoon and find out the whole truth. The Dragoon tells him that the real Dominica was already dead from an illness a long time ago and that he was posing as her to avoid raising suspicion from the higher-ups. Toru understands her point and retrieves Gaz's eyeballs. The Dragoon shapeshifts into another girl named Frederica and promises to kill Toru one day. Soon, Toru and his ladies thank the Dragoon for its help and continue their journey to find the rest of Gaz's remains. On their next stop, Chaika is seen asking some townsfolk for the location of another hero. The townsmen trick Chaika into thinking they know a hero's location. Thankfully, Toru and Frederica step in and save her from being deceived and kidnapped by the devious men. In the next scene, Toru and Chaika keep wondering where their next hero could be hiding. They come to no conclusion and just stare at each other. A few minutes later, Akari returns with some animals she'd killed from her hunt and shows them wanted posters of them that she saw back in town. Toru quickly hurries the ladies so they don't get caught by their pursuers. In the meantime, Alberic and his team take a break at a riverbank to cool off from chasing Chaika and her people. After practicing his technique, Alberic sits down with one of his subordinates to talk about his thoughts. He tells the man how jealous he is of the saboteurs, Akari and Toru, for figuring out their path in life. Alberic's man tells him to stop thinking for a bit and just focus on the future things like getting a suitable wife to marry and having kids. Alberic tells him although getting married is important, he still doesn't see someone he can call his wife at the moment. On hearing this, Vivi, one of his female subordinates who's had a crush on him for a long time, gets disappointed. At about that time, Leonardo, Alberic's scout, returns from his scout and tells him about his sightings. Apparently, Leonardo saw some people who looked like Chaika and her two friends near the town of Primera, but he wasn't sure if they were the ones. Nonetheless, Alberic quickly ends his break and heads straight for Primera. In the meantime, Chaika drives her people to an abandoned and creepy settlement. There, they find someone at the front stopping their vehicle and stopping to check them out. Toru gets off their vehicle and gets attacked by the masked person. He defends himself and removes the mask, only to find out the person actually looked much like their Chaika. The others also bust out of their hiding places to attack the remaining team members. After a long-ass scene of fighting, both parties capture their respective Chaikas, meaning Toru and Akari capture the other Chaika, while their enemies capture their own Chaika. Alberic and his team arrive on the fight scene and study it to find information on where their assailants could be at. By nightfall, Toru and Akari camp under a cave for the night. They bind the enemy Chaika and interrogate her to tell them her name. Surprisingly, the Chaika they'd have called herself Chaika Bodan. Still, Toru and his sister don't believe her. Elsewhere, the enemies interrogate Toru's Chaika to find the location of the remains. However, Chaika refuses to tell them anything and just frustrates them. When it's time for dinner, Toru's Chaika eats the food voraciously. On the other hand, the fake Chaika reluctantly eats the food given to her. After ensuring Toru's Chaika is good, her caretaker steps outside for a last-minute patrol before going to sleep. He finds a note from Toru asking for a meeting at the West River upstream. Not too far from them, Leonardo and one of his colleagues set some meat down at the meeting place for the beasts to feast on. Meanwhile, the fake Chaika tells her plans to kill all those who betrayed her father and bring them to justice after gathering his remains. When Toru asks about her memories after the war, Chaika tells him she doesn't remember. Toru remembers the same situation with his Chaika and wonders if the fake is actually a fake after all. While he's deep in thought, a bug climbs Chaika. Toru gets close to her to help her get the bug off her body and does so successfully. However, Akari gets the wrong interpretation that Toru was getting too close to Chaika, so she rushes towards them and separates them forcefully. Toru tells her what he was really doing with Chaika and tells her to just snap out of it. The next day, both parties meet upstream at the West River to get their respective Chaikas back. Both parties make sure their Chaikas are alive and well before the exchange happens. The time comes for both Chaikas to get to their sides. As they walk toward their respective teams, flying monsters attack them. Akari and Toru quickly protect Chaika while they fend off the flying monsters. Somewhere in the woods, Alberic's men hide and control the monsters to keep attacking both Chaikas. Both sides work together to bring down all of Alberic's magic flying monsters. When it's all over, Toru still holds on to the enemy's Chaika and takes her back to their hideout. On the way, they meet Frederico, who helps them clear a path through the ruins. After the fight, Leonardo finally figures it out. It seems like the Emperor Gaz had given birth to more than one daughter and named all of them Chaika. His colleagues find some sense in this fact and consider it as a possibility. At Primerial, the nobles and senators have a noisy meeting in front of the king, who's too busy sleeping the meeting through. The meeting ends in a huge disagreement between the senators, but the king does nothing about it. Still, in the forest, the fake Chaika tries to buy Toru from his Chaika. She asks him for his price. However, Toru chooses to remain loyal to his Chaika and refuses to sell himself to her. Chaika gets a bit frustrated but gives up eventually. Frederico meets up with Toru and asks him if he has feelings for his Chaika or not. A confused Toru refuses to give an answer to that as Akari returns at the right time. Both parties set up another meeting. This time, it's in town. Toru takes the fake Chaika to the town and gets his real Chaika back. Akari also joins them and teases Toru for getting too relieved after seeing Chaika. Toru sighs and just goes with the flow. Unknown to the group, they are being watched by a sniper. Thankfully, Akari catches on to the sniper and attacks her before she shoots one of them. The sniper runs away from Akari and escapes her grasp. Toru takes the ladies back to their vehicle to hide away from being spotted. Turns out that wasn't the real Akari in the market. Instead, it was Frederica, who previously changed Akari. Anyways, she changes back to her normal self and commends Toru for choosing the white Chaika after all. At about that time, Akari returns with a gift for Chaika. On getting the gift, Chaika thanks her for the thought and they continue their journey. On their way to the next town, Chaika gets worried that there are too many variants of her. She expresses her feelings to Toru, but Toru tells her to keep herself calm, that he's going to be with her always. Chaika smiles and keeps driving. They drive a few meters forward only to see the fake Chaika and David. One of her people block them from moving forward. Toru asks her what she wants and Chaika says she wants them to join them and surrender the remains to her. Failure to do so would mean war between both of them. Toru, of course, refuses to surrender. Fake Chaika immediately raises her snake blade to fight him. Chaika and David know they're outnumbered, so they retreat for the time being. Toru and Chaika continue moving forward to their next town. However, fake Chaika keeps her focus on getting Toru on her side. By nightfall, Toru, who's on night watch, checks on Chaika one more time and covers her properly. Akari appears from behind and accuses her brother of creeping in on Chaika with ill intentions. Toru just sighs and tells her to stop thinking about him doing immoral things with Chaika. At about that time, Chaika's informant pays them a visit. This time, he tells them about the next hero, Simon Scania, who lives in the Koenigsegg Empire and is believed to be dead. Toru gets really suspicious of this guy and asks him how he knows all these things. The guy tells them he's nothing but a messenger and disappears. Toru and the ladies get back to town to pick up some supplies and get some information about Simon. They get to hear the horrible things that happen to the poor man as they get their supplies. In the meantime, Alberic is seen having a meeting with Chief Conrad, talking about the weird effect Gaz remains had on the heroes as they've been displaying abnormally strange powers lately. After the meeting, Alberic gets back to his crew for updates. At about that time, the Baldi and their team finally locates Chaika and her people. Almost immediately, Alberic catches up to Toru and the ladies. He asks Chaika what her true intentions are with her father's remains. When Chaika tells them she plans on giving her father a proper burial, Alberic refuses to believe. He tells Toru to surrender Chaika and the remains or risk having to fight him. As a saboteur, Toru chooses to fight. The fight begins with both sides slashing wounds at each other. Frederica, the Dragoon, finds them fighting and turns to her full Dragoon form. She picks up Toru, Akari, and Chaika and flies them to a ravine. There, Chaika uses her locator spell to check for any signs of life or strange magic in the ravine. She senses something faintly strange and decides to climb down the cliff into the ravine. Toru and Akari are forced to follow her inside. The trio loses their footing and freefall to their deaths. Thankfully, Frederica was there to transform into her true form and catch them before they died. In the next scene, Toru and Chaika are seen getting lovey-dovey together. Outside of the illusion lies Akari, Frederica, and Chaika, all in a protective barrier. Apparently, Toru's illusion is the one they're seeing since he's under Simon's magic illusion spell. Akari gets very jealous that Toru was imagining life with Chaika and urges them to wake Toru up. However, Chaika tells her it'll be too risky and that they're better off watching the whole thing play out. The illusion ends abruptly as Toru gets betrayed by Chaika, who follows Alberic for marriage. When Toru finally snaps out of it, they get back to their mission at hand. Chaika uses her locator spell to figure out Simon's exact location, and they all follow its directions. As they peer through the thick fog, they find the equipment causing it and destroy it. The atmosphere suddenly becomes clear, and the team sees Simon Scania's shed. They approach him to confirm his identity, but Simon denies his name. Toru and the others get curious as to why a man would deny his name. Simon tells them he fled the war because his friend, Marco, sold out his unit to the enemies and on top of that, conspired with Simon's wife to leave him to rot. Toru and Chaika ask Simon for the remains of gas. Since the poor man didn't have anything to live for, he just gives it to them and shows them a way out. Toru and the ladies take the exit and are soon back in their vehicle to their next destination. Chaika talks to Toru about his illusion and lets him know she'll never betray him. Unfortunately for her, Toru tells her they have a very little chance of happening seeing as they're from different statuses of life. This gets Chaika very upset and she takes it out on Toru and ignores him for the rest of the trip. Alberic meets with Conrad to discuss the current location of Chaika and her saboteurs. Conrad tells him to stop chasing Chaika and her saboteurs for the moment. Instead, he'd prefer Alberic rather focuses on the people to make their lives better. Alberic reasons with Conrad's logic and agrees to do just that. Deep in the forest, Chaika and her keep traveling to their next town. They talk about Chaika's father and how he created magic fuel. They come across an inspection unit up ahead and are forced to stop. The guards and some other suspicious-looking people pose to be people from the Empire of Gas. They tell Toru and the ladies to pay a toll fee before they can be allowed to move forward. Without thinking, Chaika slips them a silver coin. Toru makes sure they don't divulge too much information about themselves to these people. However, the weirdos still search their vehicle through and find nothing there. Toru explains to them that they're just traveling entertainers who are on a mission to entertain the next town. The weirdos tell them to prove it by entertaining their Princess Chaika. Toru and the ladies have no choice but to pause their journey for a bit and follow these guys to their hideout or castle. When they get there, they find the beautiful blonde Princess Chaika and give a wonderful performance in front of everyone. One of the guards seems to recognize Chaika, but he just couldn't know where he'd seen her face before. Several miles away from the settlement, Vivi catches Alberic studying in the library. She initially plans on confessing her feelings for her boss, but would rather not disturb him. Once he's done studying, he joins his comrades for a nice dinner date. After their stunning performance, Toru and the ladies join the people at a campfire to eat dinner. At about that time, the scouts, or bandits, return with huge loot they stole from several noblemen. Toru immediately figures them out. They're not from Gaz Empire at all. They're nothing but thieves who are just looking for something to eat. Chaika joins her blonde doppelganger to talk about their dreams. The blonde Chaika asks Chaika to join her band of merry men. She puts what they do nicely and just says Chaika would be helping them secure financial assistance from the noble people. Chaika politely refuses to join and apologizes. Blonde Chaika then proceeds to recite a poem for Chaika. However, she's interrupted by one of her people who summons her for their next mission. Blonde Chaika changes into her other stealth costume and leaves with a few other men to steal from another noble. After dinner, Toru tells the girls about his suspicions about these people who claim to be from Gas. While Akari reasons with him, Chaika begs them to give the people the benefit of the doubt. Meanwhile, blonde Chaika gets caught by the noble she went to steal from. Apparently, someone tipped them off. Her men, however, attack Toru and Akari in their vehicle and end up regretting it as Toru beats the living hell out of their arses and ties them all up. With nothing left to do, one of the lords begs for forgiveness. At that moment, one of the thieves who followed blonde Chaika runs to inform his crew that Chaika's been captured. Chaika begs Toru to help her rescue Chaika and Toru accepts. Soon, they get to the noble's castle and bust themselves into the dungeon. They save blonde Chaika, whose real name was later found to be Julia, and return her to her people. To thank Chaika for helping her, Julia recites the poem to the end and apologizes for lying to Chaika in the first place. Soon, Toru and the others are back in their vehicle to continue their journey. Before leaving, Toru asks them if they know anything about the Great Emperor Gas. Unfortunately, the answer's no. Toru thanks the bandits for their time and tells them to be good before leaving for their next town. Late at night, the Kingdom Royals hold a meeting concerning the tyrannical rule of Duke Garvani. According to the reports, Garvani has been killing people for sport and isn't about to stop anytime soon. The town ruled by Duke Garvani prepares to celebrate her annual end-of-war anniversary festival. Toru and the ladies arrive at the town and get to a shop around the corner to buy some magic fuel powder. The shopkeeper gives them all the powder that's left and urges them to leave his shop. Toru and the ladies get back to their vehicle to find out how much magic fuel they had left. Chaika estimates about half a day of driving before they run out of fuel. She then suggests they could use her memories to power the vehicle. Toru thinks of using Chaika's memories to power the vehicle but immediately quells the thought after remembering Chaika had lost her memories. He proposes they scour the entire area to find more magic fuel for their vehicle. Back in town, Alberic and Vivi finish getting all the supplies for their team. As they walk back to their carriage, they find a mugger stealing from a noblewoman. Naturally, they retrieve the woman's purse and capture the mugger. The mugger blames the nobles for milking commoners like them for all they have and then pretending they didn't need them to survive. Alberic gets to understand how bad things are for the commoners as he returns to his vehicle. In the meantime, Alberic's guys talk about their boss while cleaning up their vehicle. Leonardo tells the team his sob story and how Alberic saved him from a life of slavery. The others also attest to their boss being a true nobleman. However, when it comes to finding love, they all agree Alberic is pretty dense in that aspect. While they discuss, Curran, Conrad's messenger, arrives with a message from the chief himself. She asks for Alberic, but the others tell her he's not around. Meanwhile, Vivi and Alberic both get fortune cookies from a shop around the corner. Vivi tries her best to get touchy-feely with her boss, but Alberic still fails to get the memo. Eventually, a messenger owl comes by, and they both return to their vehicle immediately. Toru and the ladies keep searching for magic fuel. The first few peddlers they meet on their way refuse to give them any fuel. After a few pointless hours of searching for fuel, they all decide to rest up a bit. They all sit under a peach tree and eat some of its fruits. As they munch on their snack, Toru tells the ladies a story of when he was younger and in training to be a saboteur. After the story, they all get to a lake nearby to wash off. Akari gets violent again and begins splashing water on her brother. Toru retaliates and creates beautiful scenery for Chaika. When the sun gets down, the trio get back to the village. They stop in front of a shop and ask for some magic fuel. The shopkeeper gives them all the magic fuel he has, which is enough, and tells them about their wicked leader, Duke Garvani. After getting the fuel, Toru and Chaika sit somewhere around to talk about their bad memories. He tells Chaika about his caretaker, Hasuman, and how she was killed mercilessly by bandits. He also tells her how disgusted his mentor was at him for clinging to Hasuman's memory. Chaika encourages him and tells him how important his memories of Hazumi are to her. She even relates it to the reason why Toru saved her. A few moments later, the shopkeeper calls them to get their cartridges, which he just filled. Before they leave, the shopkeeper tells them about his friend who recently acquired one of the remains. Toru and Chaika get all the information they need from the shopkeeper and leave for their vehicle. By nightfall, Alberic assigns Zeta and Vivi on a mission to infiltrate Duke Garvani's floating fortress to find out what he was doing there. The next day, Toru and Chaika get back to town. As they walk through town, everyone begins staring at them almost like they've seen a ghost. Toru finds out they were all men. Maybe they haven't seen a girl in a long time. Toru and Chaika sulk it up and walk to a magic fuel shop in hopes of getting more magic fuel for their vehicle. The shopkeeper gives them all the magic fuel he has. Chaika and Toru are shocked to see such small amounts of magic fuel coming from a town well known as the biggest supplier of magic fuel. They ask him what the matter was, and the keeper tells them it's just that they've increased the amount they give to the Duke of the town. Toru then asks him why there were no women outside when he was coming. The shopkeeper tells him the remaining women were all hiding from the Duke, who abducts a few of them once every few days. According to his story, no one knows whether or not the girls are alive, much less where they're being kept in the Duke's mansion. Toru asks him why no one has gone to the mansion yet, and the keeper tells him it's because the mansion is a floating one. Toru pays the shop and returns to his vehicle with Chaika. He meets with Akari and Frederica to think of a plan to get to the Duke's mansion. After getting things in order, Toru asks Frederica to help them to the mansion, but Frederica tells them she'd take them there on the condition that Toru fights her when they get back. Toru reluctantly agrees to her demands, and by nightfall, they're all up in the air heading straight for the floating mansion to check the lay of the fortress. Akari suggests they burst into the mansion instantly, but Toru tells them they have to wait a while before entering the mansion. The next day, the Duke comes by for another abduction. This time, Akari poses as one of the frail women in town and lets herself get captured by the guards. In the meantime, Vivi and Zita successfully break into the mansion and begin studying every operation there so they can send a good report to their boss. At about that time, the generals and royals hosted another meeting to talk about the Duke's treachery to the nation. The general and commander of the military proposed they take the fight to the Duke and subjugate him once and for all. Conrad opposes his idea and tells the king to give his team a little more time to settle the matter more diplomatically. Unfortunately for him, the king gives the war general the go-ahead to start the war. Alberic receives the first report from Vivi and Zita. While he reads it, he gets an urgent transmission from Conrad, who tells him to hurry things up as things are quickly getting out of hand. At that same time, the war general rallies his troops to head for the Duke's domain. Alberic quickly sends a messenger owl to Viva and Zita to warn them of the impending danger. At about that time, Toru, Chaika, Akari, and Frederica successfully sneak into the floating fortress. They walk around a little until they're discovered by the guards. When they're found, the guards surround them and immediately begin attacking them without uttering a word. They stab Frederica and chase after the others. Toru and Chaika manage to hide from the soldiers and wonder what the soldiers would have been thinking of. Akari, on the other hand, gets caught by the soldiers and is taken to the Duke. Vivi and Zita keep sneaking through the mansion. They get into a small argument about their next course of action when the messenger owl arrives. Riccardo Garvani, son of Gavani and acting Duke, presents himself to Akari. He takes a liking to her body simply because he finds it irresistible for his slicing fetish. C. Riccardo has a very weird and awful liking for cutting people apart. It's then revealed that he, alongside his right-hand man, Grad, had been taking girls from the town and slicing them up for satisfaction and sport. After introducing himself, Riccardo hands Akari over to Grad for the magic infusion. Grad uses a spell to turn Akari to fight on their side. In the meantime, Chaika and Toru keep searching for Akari and the girls. They come across a girl wearing a cloak who appears harmless. The lady begs Toru to rescue the girls they trapped and uses Chaika to urge Toru to do her bidding. Then, she leaves. After finding out about the impending attack, Riccardo and Grad smile and rally their men to fight against their enemies. Turns out war has been their goal since day one. Toru gets attacked by Akari and a few guards and is forced to take his eyes off Chaika. The harmless lady sees Toru's distracted, so she stylishly takes Chaika out of Toru's reach and gets her to another room. Toru keeps up his fight with Akari and tries to escape. However, Akari finds him and keeps trying to kill him. Toru gets very angry at Akari for turning against him. What he fails to notice is that she's been put under a spell and had no choice but to fight him. The harmless lady takes Chaika to her room and asks for her name. When she gets it, she locks Chaika in the room and goes to meet Riccardo to inform him that she's captured the intruder's leader, Chaika. A few kilometers outside the mansion, Alberic rallies his men and leaves their vehicle to confront the war general and his army up front. Back in the floating fortress, Akari catches up to Toru again. This time, she overpowers him and throws him off a high-level platform to free fall to his death. Luckily for Toru, Vivi and Zita see him falling down and use a magic spell to save him before he hits rock bottom. Toru thanks them and makes a deal with them. They help him find Chaika and in return, he helps them get out of the mansion. Vivi and Zita consider their options and join Toru to look for Chaika and Akari. Together, the trio walks to get back into the fortress to find Chaika and probably save Akari. Grad and Riccardo finish setting up the fortress and set it in motion for the capital. Riccardo gives the word and they begin moving the fortress again. Layla, the harmless girl, gets back to Chaika and tells her the truth. Apparently, she was once a Chaika doppelganger who got tired of sharing her personality with several other girls. She tells Chaika that she's just a version of a whole person and is yet to know her true self. As they continue their search for Chaika, Toru and his two companions find the hiding place for the dead bodies Ricardo and the others mutilated earlier on. Meanwhile, Layla removes her cloak and reveals her true self to Chaika. After finding the storage room for the rotting bodies, Vivi and Zeta tell Toru they suspect Ricardo and Gade, his right-hand man, to be the ones behind the murders. Toru tells them he knows of another girl who's with them, the girl who took Chaika. Turns out that girl was busy feeding Chaika with various lies and accusations about herself. Akari catches up to Toru, Viva, and Zeta yet again, but she manages to lose them this time. Somewhere else, Frederica, who's been eavesdropping on Chaika and Layla, reveals herself. Layla finds out Frederica is a dragoon. She summons the mansion's guard dog and orders it to puncture Frederica's brain. Chaika watches her friend get dragged into the vents by the huge white guard dog. Outside the fortress, Alberic catches up to the captain of the ground troops and tries to talk him out of declaring war on the Duke. The captain refuses to do that. Nonetheless, Alberic begs him to delay the war at least for a little while so as to buy his comrades enough time to get out of the mansion. The general tells him he can't and continues with the invasion. Alberic refuses to let him go any further into the town. In the meantime, Toru and the ladies run into the guard dog in the vents and run for dear life. Toru decides to climb outside the mansion's wall to get to Chaika and save her in time while Alberic tries his very best to make sure the troops never get to the town. So the fight between the capital troops and Ricardo still continues. The war general gets informed of the ruckus Alberic is causing to the ground troops. When asked what to do, he orders them to change the captain and continue the attack on the floating fortress. The general's warship fires a magic ray toward the fortress and manages to inflict a little damage. Toru and the others feel the shockwave from the attack and hurry things up. Alberic still takes his stand to prevent the ground troops from getting any further into Ricardo's land. Ricardo retaliates the attack and fires a ray toward the general's warship. The warship gets hit real bad, and the general is surprised. Following their first attacks, the two ships open fire on each other, hoping to bring one down before the next. Chaika, who's still locked in the room, keeps finding a way out of there. Toru comes across a guard dog on his way to find Chaika and kills it without hesitating. Akari and Alberic's girls, while walking, find Frederica's dead body. Apparently, the guard dog had punctured her brain, so she should be dead. Surprisingly, she's not. At that moment, a younger Frederica tears her way out of her former body and takes Akari to find Chaika. Outside the fortress, both parties keep shooting at each other. At one point in the battle, Ricardo's fortress misfires a ray toward the ground where Alberic and the others were. The ray hits Alberic and kills him with a few other royal guards. Ricardo and Guard find they can't use magic anymore as their ray guns have been hit. Now that they're powerless, Layla suggests they crash the entire ship into the capital so they could kill enough people to ignite a war. Ricardo loves the idea, so he continues moving towards the capital. The war general's warship is badly hit. However, he refuses to back down from the fight. He orders his men to fly his warship straight into Ricardo's fortress so they can both die together. After wandering around the ship, Chaika finds Ricardo and Layla worshipping Gaz's remains at the center of the warship. Around that time, the general's warship crashes Ricardo's fortress and takes it off course. Both ships lose power and fall slowly into the lake underneath them. Chaika reveals herself to Ricardo and Layla. Ricardo's fetish kicks in again, and he inches closer to Chaika, hoping to cut off some parts of their body. Luckily for her, Toru gets there in time to stop the maniac from destroying Chaika. Somewhere on the ship, Akari and the others come across a few guard dogs. Frederica gets invigorated and changes into her true form to take them down. Toru finds Ricardo and Layla about to cut into Chaika. He quickly unleashes his power, the Iron Blood transformation, and fights Ricardo. Ricardo gets the upper hand in the beginning, but Toru manages to find his weak spot and stab him. All the while, Akari finds the wizard controlling the ship, Guard, and takes him out. This causes everyone under his control, including the pilots, to lose control over the ship. Toru helps Chaika retrieve the remains of her father and locks them in her coffin. Layla sneaks in from behind and shoots an arrow at Chaika. Toru takes the hit and falls down the platform into the water gushing into the ship from the lake. Layla turns to finish off Chaika, but she sees an image of Chaika's informant and gets distracted. Chaika quickly speaks a magic spell and knocks her down. Then, she dives into the water and saves Toru through mouth-to-mouth resuscitation. In other words, she kinda kissed him. When Toru gets back to life, he asks her why she chose to save him. However, Chaika tells him she felt the need to. Having heard that from the person he loves, Toru proceeds to kiss Chaika for real this time. Unfortunately for him, Akari and Frederica arrive just in time to interrupt them and fly them out of the lake. In his last moments on Earth, Ricardo lies in the hands of Layla. Instead of feeling regret for all the things he's done, he actually feels peaceful. As he passes on, Layla thanks him for helping her live the life she wanted. Just then, water floods the entire ship and drowns everybody on it. Vivi and Zeta return to their team to report to Alberic. Nikolai, their colleague, breaks the bad news to them. On hearing that her beloved was gone, Vivi loses her cool and screams out loud. Something very unusual happens as her hair turns white. Toru, Chaika, and the others all manage to get out of the lake alive. In the ending scene, Frederica proposes Toru signs a contract with her so he can become a Dragoon Cavalier and elevate his status. Toru puts his decision on hold, and they continue on to finding the remains of the Emperor. 5 years ago, as Gaz Empire faces near destruction, Emperor Gaz gets desperate as he knows he's going to die very soon. He hands over a secret mission to his emissary and gets ready to have the last fight of his life. That very night, Gaz is attacked by the 8 heroes from the Alliance and killed. Even after 5 years of his death, the Emperor's name still strikes fear into the hearts of the 6 nations as they fear his daughter, who after the Emperor's remains is up to no good. In a meeting, the royals discuss the recent attack on Riccardo Garvani for about a month, which caused the death of their war general. Conrad is called upon to present a report on the entire incident. Conrad tells the officials about the recent rise of Chaikas, whose sole mission is to find and gather the remains of their father, Emperor Gaz. Elsewhere, Chaika faces Lady Claudia, one of the 8 heroes who took down Gaz, in a fierce battle to obtain her father's remains from her. Akari and Toru, on the other hand, are attacked by some ex-soldiers not too far away. Toru gets worried about Chaika and activates his saboteur power. The soldiers were surprised to see they were fighting against their comrades. They ask Toru why he was like that, but Toru says Chaika's wish is his command. He knocks down the soldiers and rushes to find Chaika completely defeated by Lady Claudia. Claudia ends the fight and takes her 3 visitors to her mansion. There, the trio eats a wonderful lunch and gets to see business mogul Claudia carry out her managerial operations on her vineyard and winery business. Toru and Akari wonder whether Claudia is truly a hero or not because she definitely didn't look the part. The servant with them tells them Claudia is indeed a hero who fought alongside 7 others to bring down the Emperor. Claudia overhears them from her station and comes over to the table. She gives Chaika another chance to fight for her father's remains. This time, she can fight alongside her 2 saboteurs and nobody else. Chaika immediately agrees to the terms. Claudia then tells them about the Chaikas appearing all around town seeking the Emperor's remains. Chaika tries to convince her she's the real Chaika. Claudia is indifferent to Chaika's claims. Instead, she advises Chaika to learn how to shorten her magic spells if she wants to win their next fight. Chaika thanks Claudia for her advice and continues the rest of her day. That night, Chaika gets worried about her fight with Claudia the next day. She thinks hard about how to shorten her spells, but just couldn't find out how. Frederica creeps into their room and tells Toru the offer to be her cavalier is still open. Toru ignores her and turns to Chaika. He tells her she'll have to practice all night to master the spell-shortening techniques. Chaika gets outside and begins her spell-shortening training. Toru stands next to her to supervise her and watches her try and fail. At the capital the next day, Alberic Gillette's team presents their report to Conrad. After reading through the report, Conrad appoints Nikolai as the new leader of the team and orders them to continue investigating Chaika. Vivi gets outside to take some air when Guy, Chaika's informant, appears to her. Vivi is hostile at first, but Guy tells her she shows some traits of being one of the Emperor's Chaikas. Vivi refuses to accept her reality, but Guy tells her she has no choice but to accept her new identity. The time comes for the rematch between Lady Claudia and Chaika. This time, Toru and Akari join her to face the strong woman. Claudia begins the fight and manages to distract Toru and Akari so she can land a hit on Chaika. The fight between Lady Claudia and the trio continues with the hero keeping up nicely. She knocks Chaika down at a point and asks for her surrender. Chaika refuses to surrender and continues the fight. Claudia faces Akari, who is meant to distract her while Toru helps Chaika. Toru hides Chaika from Claudia. However, Claudia finds their location and destroys their hiding place. Somewhere else, the fake Red Chaika earlier attacks a hero in the forest and collects one of Gaz's remains before continuing her journey with her comrades, David and Selma. On their way to the next location, Red Chaika remembers Toru and his last words to her. She vows to take revenge on him for choosing his Chaika over her and also make sure she gets to the remaining remains before Toru's Chaika. Up ahead of their carriage, the informant who calls himself Guy appears to them to reveal the location of the next hero to them. He tells the Red Chaika and her people about Clay Morgan, the next hero with the Emperor's remains. Before leaving, he also tells the Red Chaika to visit the island off the coast while she's at it. Meanwhile, Toru, Akari, and Chaika still battle the fierce Claudia. They hide from her sight and replan their strategy. When it's time to implement it, Toru and Akari activate their Iron Blood transformation powers and distract Claudia well enough to give Chaika enough time to get a clear shot at Claudia. Luckily for them, the plan works and Chaika defeats the hero. After the fight, Claudia gets back up and commends Chaika's performance during the fight. She tells her some other piece of advice and then invites the trio to eat lunch with her. Back in the capital, Vivi gets some time alone to think about the late love of her life. Curran calls for her attention and presents some of Alberic's documents and journals to her. Vivi takes the journal and peers into it a little bit. She finds out about the late Emperor Gaz's empire and sets herself up to continue her mission. After giving Vivi all she needs, Curran reports to Conrad to update him on Vivi's progress. Chaika and her two saboteurs all have grapes for lunch. While they eat, Claudia releases the remains to them and tells them about the Emperor's remains. The trio are all surprised about this as they've never heard of the Emperor having any fortune before. Claudia tells them she witnessed a servant of the Emperor confess about an island where Gaz's fortune is kept right before he's slain. After telling them her story, she leaves them to finish their lunch and gets back to her business. By nightfall, Chaika and her saboteurs leave Claudia's mansion for their next destination. Claudia wishes they could stay the night at least before leaving, but Toru tells her they have to leave under the cover of dark seeing as they were fleeing from the law. Claudia bids them farewell and they leave. When Frederica arrives, Toru and Akari scour all around town to find Clay, all to no avail. Toru walks into the last place he'd ever expect Clay to hide and surprisingly finds him there. Clay immediately attacks Toru and tells him about the monster he helped 7 other heroes to kill. Even though the Emperor was about to die, he still looked down at the heroes, and this made Clay very terrified of anything related to Gaz. That's probably the reason why he employs entertainers to keep him from remembering the Emperor. Akari joins the fight shortly, and her brother subdues Clay. Clay asks them what they're really after, and Toru tells him all he wants is the remains. Clay willingly gives them the remains and warns Toru never to show his face again. Toru and Akari retrieve the remains and get back to town. There, Guy appears to them and tells them to go to the island off the coast next. Toru plans with Akari to find a way to the island next. Up next, Shin Akira, Toru's mentor from ages ago, faces a weird king and his 2 daughters who order him to pursue his former apprentice and apprehend their Chaika. Toru and Akari get back to their vehicle only to find out Chaika's been busy asking around town for help getting to the island. Toru finds Chaika begging random fishermen to help her get to the island. He brings her back to the vehicle and scolds her for going out unsupervised. Chaika tells him she has to find her father's fortune and the reason why he created so many Chaikas. Toru tries to tell her to calm down and think of their next move carefully. However, Chaika flares up and accidentally fires Toru and Akari. Toru immediately takes his leave and gets somewhere else. Frederica also gets up to take her leave. However, Chaika stops her and begs her to fly her to the island off the coast. Toru settles down by the beach of the ocean to rest before finding their new path the next morning. Akari sits him down and reminds him they have to get back to Chaika, no matter what, for they know Chaika never meant to fire them. Toru sucks it up and gets back to the vehicle. On getting there, he finds Frederica flying Chaika to the island. Toru quickly got back to town to borrow one of Clay Morgan's boats so they could sail towards the island. Clay lends them his boat and helps them get out of town. In the meantime, Chaika locates the island by using magic to clear the fog around it. While on the sea, Toru finds out the Red Chaika and her team had gotten on the ship before they left. They call them out and challenge them to a face-off. Before they get a chance to fight, a Kraken seizes control of the ship and rips it into shreds. Chaika and Frederica also get shot down from the sky by the island's defense dragoons. Chaika gets separated from Frederica and her coffin on the island. She picks up her sniper gun and walks further into the island to search for help. After their ship gets destroyed by the Kraken, Red Chaika and her team still manage to swim to the island and climb up the mountain to get to the Emperor's fortune. On the other hand, Akari and Toru pass a different route and are seen climbing the same mountain to search for answers. After walking a few meters into the jungle, Chaika gets ambushed by the island guards and is captured in no time. Elsewhere, Red Chaika and her team also get ambushed and captured by the guards. Toru and Akari find a piece of cloth belonging to Chaika and conclude that she may have been captured. At that same moment, the secret lab on the island, led by the Emperor's emissary, checks out some of his Chaika experiments when one of his demi-human guards comes by to give a report. According to the reports, they captured some of the human intruders on the island but couldn't find the remaining two. The emissary gets very angry and insults the demi-human guard who came to report to him. Chaika, who's in a dungeon, gets served by a demi-human maid. She asked her for any updates about the island, and the maid tells her about something big that's about to come to the island. Toru and Akari split up to find any traces of Chaika. Toru finds the island's only building and sneaks into the dungeon to rescue Chaika. Akari, on the other hand, finds Frederica somewhere around and rescues her from the dangerous island animals. Toru gets Chaika out of the dungeon and apologizes for abandoning her in the first place. Then, they both find their way around the building. They accidentally find a room that housed an imprisoned Kraken. The Kraken speaks to them, surprisingly, and tells them that the emissary captured and imprisoned him for experimental purposes. Ever since he was captured, the emissary has used his research to make clones of the Kraken. The Kraken also tells them about the Chaika saga and their horrible fate. Chaika is once again reminded of the terrible fate she's forced to have. In another part of the castle, where Red Chaika and her people are kept, the demi-human and the maid contemplate what and how to capture the remaining intruders. The Kraken then takes its time to explain the origin of magic and all it entails to its listeners. He tells them about the human emperor Gaz's greed and ambition to seize control of the natural magic powers residing in the natural world. He also explains that the Chaikas are all kept to carry out the emperor's grand ambition. He spits out some other facts Chaika shouldn't forget and stops when the guards catch up to them. Soon, Toru and Chaika are both captured and led to the master of the island, Izmashi. Izmashi gets to meet the two different Chaika breeds at the same time and introduces himself as the director of the Institute of Magic on the island. While he talks, one of the Chaika clones in the containment room responds to the presence of the Chaikas in the room by saying the name Chaika out loud. Izmashi explains the mysteries behind the Chaikas, telling them they were nothing but the product of his own experiments. After the war with the Emperor, Victor Izmashi captured all the orphaned girls in the kingdom and used magic to alter their memory into thinking they were all daughters of the great Emperor Gaz. From then on, the Chaika legacy was born. Izmashi finishes his story and throws all the captives into dungeons. Then, he brings in the demi-humans, Ursula and Cyril, and imprisons them as well. Their crime? Nothing much. Turns out Izmashi was already done with them, so he needed to dispose of them. Red Chaika gets very restive with her captors and causes trouble as she's been tied to a bed. Both Chaikas work together to knock their guards out and free themselves. Then, they sneak outside their cell and avoid getting caught by the patrolling guards. The Red Chaika keeps getting irritated by the White Chaika's presence. However, she manages her until they get to Izmashi's personal research office. As they're about to leave, White Chaika begs Red Chaika to help her release the Chaika they met in Izmashi's research lab, Nivalada. With great strength, they eventually release Naiva and take her along with them. At about that time, Izmashi finds out about Naiva's escape. He immediately puts the whole facility on lockdown and mobilizes his guards to make sure nobody escapes the island. Too bad for him as Akari, Toru, and Frederica had already freed themselves and were on their way to finding Chaika. Along the way, Akari rescues David and Selma before continuing her search. On her way to finding Chaika, she finds the demi-humans captured and tied to one another. They beg Akari to release them, and she does just that. Izmashi gets back to his research office only to find out Nivalata, the Chaika he was so proud of, had already been freed by Turu's group. Turu eventually finds the Chaikas and helps them escape. Izmashi orders his men to make sure they get Nivalata back no matter what. Just then, he finds out that his enemies had already busted their way out of the building and were on their way to the island. After getting rescued, David, Selma, and the demi-humans seal the room where the dragoons and demon unicorns are kept. Then, they get to Izmashi's office and take out all the guards there. After getting out of the building, Turu and his group are attacked by the island's Orthros and Phalos. Everyone gets into fighting mode to take out all the beasts. However, Izmashi isn't done with them yet, as he keeps directing all magic abilities in his arsenal toward his enemies. Naiva transforms herself into magic essence and fuses with Chaika's sniper gun. In one large attack, Chaika uses her Naiva-enhanced gun to destroy Izmashi's research facility. Izmashi suffers heavy damage and loses his life to the attack. After the matchup, everyone goes their separate ways. In the next meeting, the royals talk about the recent uprising in King Stephen Harkin's kingdom. King Stephen hosted a competition between fighters to fight for the remains of the Emperor Gaz. The rest of senators propose they immediately confront the king about this action. However, Commander Fyodor tells them to take a more stealthy approach and find out what his plans are first. The board reasons with his logic and appoints Conrad to oversee the investigation. Up next, Turu comforts Chaika, who's very worried about the fate of her life. Nivalata, Izmashi's research Chaika, tells Turu's Chaika that she's the one with the true destiny to find Arthur Gaz's remains. King Stephen's emissary presents to him an urgent query from the capital of the Six Kingdoms, asking him to provide a logical reason behind the tournament he's hosting and the conditions around it. King Stephens ignores the query and tells his emissary they'd be continuing the tournament with or without the capital's support. In the next scene, Turu and his adopted sister dives into the ocean to catch their breakfast. They return with a very large fish and get down to cooking it for the four of them. While they eat their breakfast, Guy appears to them again to tell them the location of the hero with the next remains. He tells them King Stephen Hartgen holds some of the remains and that they need to hurry up before Red Chaika and her team beat them to the remains. When Guy's finally gone, Turu expresses his disgust for him and wonders who he works for. He turns back to his crew and continues eating his food. Nikolay and his team arrive at Izmashi's island only to find the research facility in ruins from Naiva and Chaika's blast. While investigating the parts, Ursula and Cyril show their faces to the team. After the necessary introductions, the demi-humans tell them about the whole ordeal they went through a few nights ago. Leonardo asks Kryl why Izmashi continued his research even after the Emperor died. Cyril tells them he was doing it under the Emperor's orders. After telling them all they could about the island and Izmashi, the demi-humans head back into the forest. A few hours later, Nikolay and his team receive a message from Conrad, telling them about Turu and the Red Chaika's next destination. Conrad also gives them permission to get to King Stephen Hartgen's town, Verbist, to continue their investigation. After their breakfast, Chaika lets Turu know about her concerns. She fears she may not be a real person after all. Turu tells her not to worry, that he's made his resolve to help her no matter what. At about that time, Akari returns from her fishing outing and brings some mollusks for them to eat. Red Chaika and her comrades arrive at the gates of Verbist. There, they're attacked by some guards. Luckily, they're alert and manage to knock them all down. Just then, another guard comes by and welcomes them to the tournament. He gives them a red cloth to tie on their arms so they can identify as participants in the tournament. Chaika and her comrades receive the band and continue on. In another area of town, two tournament participants get into a fight before the tournament begins. A weird person who looks like Alberic walks into the fight and takes out the two fighters. With shocks on everyone's face, he walks back and orders the guards to clean the mess up. Turu and his people go into town to have their lunch. The shopkeeper warns them not to get to Verbist whilst the tournament takes place because it's going to be a violent place to be in. In their vehicle, Nikolay and his men wonder why King Stephen would host such a tournament. He decides to split his into two, with a group meeting the king and another getting into the tournament. Matthews and Zita, both members of Nikolay's team, meet with the king. On hearing their demands, King Stephen still refuses to cancel the tournament. Nikolai and the others win the qualifying round and get accepted into the tournament. Same with Toru and his own team. Up next, Guy appears to the blonde guy who killed the two fighters in town. The blonde guy asks Guy who he was and Guy explains it all. Apparently, Alberic wasn't killed in the battle between the war general and Ricardo. Guy appeared at the last minute and saved him from certain death. So I guess that confirms it. The blonde guy really is Alberic. After telling him the truth, Guy disappears. Things go on normally as random fights keep popping up in town. The king's guards visit Matthews and Zeta back in the vehicle in order to bring them back to the palace for entertainment. In the meantime, Chaika, Toru, and Akari find their way into the palace's sewage network. Chaika uses her locator spell to locate her father's remains from the sewers and gives them the information. That night, Guy appears to Naiva and proceeds to take her back to wherever he lives. Chaika sees them and follows them, but Naiva tells her not to worry about her and that she's going voluntarily. Under the cover of darkness, Akari and Toru dive into the water surrounding the city's main underground water system. They snorkel through the water until they find an outlet into the palace. As they surface, they find traps above the outlet. After stopping the two big axes from killing them, they get out of the water. However, they're met with their former mentor, Shin, and are forced to fight him. Shin manages to send the Dew back to where they came. Toru and Akari swim back to their hotel rooms in utmost shock after seeing their mentor, Shin. While they dry themselves up, Chaika tells them about Guy taking Naiva away. Toru warns her never to speak to Guy again because of his shadiness. Akari talks about their meeting, which Shin and Chaika is surprised. She spouts a few other nonsensical facts. However, Toru ignores her and asks Chaika if they still have any magic fuel left. Chaika tells Toru she still does. Toru then tells her to use her locator spell again to begin another search to find the enemies or the remains in the kingdom. Chaika does so and finds the remains, and the king may be at the top of the castle. At about that time, Stephen meets with Guy and Naiva. Stepan, who's been seeking help from Guy and the black Chaika he had with him, confesses that he made a very big mistake 5 years ago, helping the humans defeat the Emperor. Turns out he was a warrior who never wanted the war to end. Peace gives his life no purpose at all. The next day, Stephen gives a nice speech to rile up and agitate the warriors of the tournament to fight to their heart's content. Toru, Akari, Chaika, Red Chaika, and other curious warriors, including Nikolai and Vivi, all appear to participate in the tournament. Black Chaika watches her father's speech from a monitor in her room. Her sisters, Irina and Ariana, join her to see their dad live. After the speech, the tournament begins. Apparently, each team is to take down as many warriors as they can, steal their armbands, and bring them to the guards once they're over to proceed to the next stage. Toru splits his team into two groups. He and Chaika work together and keep up the pace until they meet Vivi and Nikolai. The two opposing teams talk about the weirdo that keeps appearing to them, Guy, and wonder why he took the Emperor's fortune, Naiva. Vivi suggests the king is working with them to gather all the remains of the Emperor. Akari and Frederica, who are on the other team, also keep pummeling their enemies to proceed further into the tournament. In an emergency meeting with the royals, the officers of the nation discover that Chaika had stolen the fortune of Gaz and taken it somewhere. This enrages the officials as they call for the beginning of another war. While the others agree, Fyodor tells them to keep their cool to avoid reckless bloodshed and killings. After the meeting, one of the officials conspires with his colleague to start gathering their armies for the war to begin. Meanwhile, Fyodor and Conrad find out about the floating fortresses Gaz had back then before his empire was demolished. Conrad continues talking about his thing when they receive another message from the Gilead squad. After reading the message, they find out Hartkin is really pushing for a war. In the meantime, Red Chaika and her team get locked out of some parts of the tournament. When asked why, they say it's because her team cheated and used magic in the tournament. The fight continues into the forest and things get tougher. Still, Chaika and Toru manage to bring down their enemies in no time. After their fight, Chaika tells Toru they have to overcome the Chaikas and bring home her father's remains. In the second round, the surviving teams would have to cross a bridge and defeat two teams in order to get to the third inner wall of the palace. Everyone immediately gets on their bridges, with only a few of them actually crossing to the other side, including Nikolai and Vivi. When they get to the other side, they're captured and taken another way. Apparently, someone revealed their real identity to the king, who ordered his guards to get them to the top of the castle for whatever reason. Toru and Chaika continue through the third wall of the castle. Soon, the guards capture them and lead them to another separate path, just like Vivi and Nikolai. Toru and Chaika move forward into the path and talk a little about the emperor. Toru asks Chaika if she wants war like her father and Harkin does. Surprisingly, Chaika tells Toru she wants nothing of that nature. Toru keeps on walking with her, smiling. Elsewhere, Leonardo finds Matthews and Zita in prison. He gives them their sniper guns and helps them escape prison. As they're about to leave, they meet one of the king's former retainers in the prison, begging them to release him. The trio help him out, and to thank them, the retainer tells a thing or two about King Stephen. Apparently, once the war was over, Stephen never remained the same. It took him an era of peace to realize that he'd only wanted war all his life and even despised peace. That was the case until Black Chaika arrived and showed him a new way to revive the war that just ended. After explaining the chain of events that led to the tournament, the retainer leaves the castle and asks the trio to please stop the king before it's too late. At that same moment, Stephen meets with Black Chaika to talk about their next move. Black Chaika tells him to keep his cool and watch the magic happen once the interested parties begin realizing what they are into. Somewhere around the castle, Akari and Frederica discover a room filled with Chaikas and their coffins. They somehow manage to defeat the Chaikas and continue their search for the remains. Toru and Chaika finally see an exit to the long tunnel they've been traveling through for a while. They get to the end only to find out that Chaika was waiting for them with guards all around. In the meantime, Nikolai and Vivi accidentally find their former captain Alberic's cell. Before they get to speak to him, a guard comes to them to take them back to the tournament. A few minutes later, Vivi and Nikolai get to meet their former master, Alberic. Without hesitating, Alberic fights his former teammates and almost takes them out. Vivi keeps trying to talk some sense into him. However, Alberic seems to have had his memory completely wiped off from his head, as he just keeps fighting. He keeps fighting them until he pins down Nikolai and raises his sword. Just as he's about to kill him, Vivi picks up her sword and cuts his right hand away. Alberic suddenly remembers Vivi's voice. Nikolai and Vivi quickly carry him out of the arena to escape the dreadful guards. Akari and Frederica, while searching for a way out the castle, run into Shin, her former mentor. Shin seals Frederica's powers and fights Akari. Toru and Chaika face Red Chaika and David. After exchanging abusive words towards one another, the two teams get to fight. Toru activates his Iron Blood transformation technique and gets to fight David. On the other hand, the two Chaikas face each other in a magic fight. The fight goes on until David and Red Chaika get hit. Red Chaika immediately admits defeat and backs out of the fight. Soon, Shin appears with a knocked out Akari and Frederica. Toru immediately fights him and gets beaten up by his former mentor. After he's lost, Shin orders Toru to hand over the remains he has left if he ever wants to see his Chaika again. Things seem to be going according to Stephen's plan. Toru and Akari get thrown out of the castle with Frederica. Once they get back to their senses, they find out Frederica's been poisoned and can't heal properly. On the other hand, Red Chaika gives up collecting the remains of the Emperor and tells David to give their own remains to Toru's Chaika. They return to their motel and find Selma already defeated. Red Chaika quickly runs over to Toru to meet Chaika. Unfortunately for her, White Chaika's been taken by the king. Nikolai and Vivi sneak Alberic out of the palace and return to their motel rooms. There, they meet Leonardo and Zita, who are psyched to see their boss alive and without a right hand. Toru eventually gets to their vehicle to rest up for their next move. Frederica tries to wear off the poison from her body by molting. Unfortunately, this doesn't work well for her as her new form still feels dizzy. Toru retrieves Chaika's coffin and prepares to get back to the palace. Meanwhile, Alberic and his team are able to get to their vehicle without raising any alarms. They immediately phone Chief Conrad to give him an update about everything that happened in the short time. Conrad keeps wondering why King Stephen wants war. Still, he doesn't seem to have a good reason why. After capturing the White Chaika, Shin takes her to Stephen. On seeing the king, White Chaika gets a memory from the day her father was killed. Conrad immediately gets Fyodor on the phone with Alberic. He tells them about the floating fortress the capital sent to Verbist and advises him to try and stop an all-out war from breaking out within the Six Kingdoms. Alberic receives his message and assures him that they'd be victorious. Following the meeting, Alberic gets back to the palace. Toru and Akari also get to the palace to trade Chaika's coffin for herself. On getting there, he presents the coffin to the king and finds out Guy had been working with Stephen all along. As if that wasn't enough, he also finds out Black Chaika's true plans. Apparently, she was just using Stephen's love for war to get all the remains back in one place. Toru tries to attack her, but Alberic stops him and tells him to wait for his time. Black Chaika begins a revival ritual and absorbs all of Gaz's remains. Everyone watches the weird magic reaction, which causes Black Chaika to get a climatic sensation as Emperor Gaz gets back to life. Once the rebirth is complete, the Emperor appears as a little boy. Stefan quickly submits himself under the leadership of Gaz and asks to be his servant. However, Gaz kills him and reveals the truth to the Chaikas in the room. He tells them they were nothing but tools to help him get back to the world. Just then, he grows into the adult Gaz we all know and sits on his throne. Everyone in the room stands in shock as they listen to Gaz tell Toru's Chaika how similar she was to the Chaika that actually stayed with him during the cloning process. Toru challenges him and asks him why he went through the stress of getting reborn. Gaz tells them he wanted to plant the fear of death in his body and return back a few years later to ensure he brings 1,000 years of war upon the humans, thus satisfying their innate desire to keep fighting. He tells the group that he created a device to absorb feelings and amplify them into magic power. Following his revelation, Gaz tears a hole in the castle wall and summons his wand, Naiva, to become his weapon. Naiva attaches herself to his hands and activates magic that Gaz fires towards the capital's floating fortress. Before beginning the war, Gaz aims Naiva up in the sky and fires another ray into space to bring back his floating fortress, which has been resting there. The royals hold another meeting to discuss their next course of action after the destruction of their floating fortress in Verbist. The royals advise they begin a war on Verbist. However, Fyodor still believes in the Gilead team and orders them to wait. After summoning his floating castle, Gaz opens fire on the city of Verbist. Chaika is still brokenhearted now that she has no reason to live. Toru tries to comfort her, but Chaika approaches them to take them out. Lucky for them, Toru uses his last strength to send them off. Alberic also catches up to Toru and asks him for the way forward. In a bit of desperation, Toru abandons his saboteur position and forms a contract with Frederica to become a Dragoon Cavalier. Once the pact is sealed, Toru transforms into a new and stronger being. He gets on his new Dragoon and flies straight to the tower with Chaika. Toru stops over at a building close to the floating tower and drops Chaika before flying into the floating tower. In the tower, Gaz discusses with Shin as he activates the magic thingies he kept in space for his return. Meanwhile, Alberic quickly sends a progress report to his boss informing of Gaz's rebirth and plans to start a war. Black Chaika manages to corner Akari and Red Chaika as she keeps sending dozens of Chaikas their way. Toru has trouble breaking through the floating fortress barrier. After several unsuccessful attempts, he's let into the castle by Gaz himself. Alberic discovers what will happen if they let Gaz successfully activate the feeling device. Akari and her people keep on fighting the Chaikas. Toru, on the other hand, meets Shin on his way to Emperor Gaz. Shin challenges Toru to a fight and gets stabbed in the process. In his final moments of life, he commends Toru for finally becoming who he's meant to be. Akari and her people keep on fighting and taking down the immortal Chaikas one by one as they keep coming back in droves. Red Chaika manages to kill the Black Chaika and deactivate the other Chaikas fighting the others. As she runs out of magic bullets, Chaika decides to use a locator spell to find out where Toru and Frederica are in the floating castle. She finds him in the Emperor's chambers and wishes him good luck. Now in Gaz's chambers, Toru gets to listen to Gaz's boring-ass speech about humans and wars and whatnot. Gaz ends up praising Toru, which only annoys him the most. Toru begins his attack on the Emperor and gets defeated in a matter of minutes. He stands back up and continues fighting the Emperor and forces Gaz to pin him to the ground with spiky spears. The Emperor gets up from his seat and opens a part of his floating castle so he could send Toru and his Dragoon out of his castle. Chaika sees this and quickly activates a shield spell which protects Toru and Frederica from getting hit. Gaz's spell pushes Toru away from the castle, but no harm comes to them. Gaz finds Chaika on another tower aiming at him. He summons Naiva, his wand, to attach herself and take Chaika out. However, Naiva shocks everybody and refuses to shoot a death ray at Chaika. Instead, she detaches herself from Gaz and attaches herself to Chaika. Once the fusion is complete, Chaika uses her memory as magic fuel to produce a huge destruction ray which completely obliterates her father. Gaz prepares to take her out. However, the power was too much for him, so he gets destroyed once again. Peace wins. In the next royal meeting, Alberic reports the success of his mission to the officers and gets promoted for his hard work. Chief Conrad also gets promoted to Officer Conrad. He gets back to Gilead and his team to have a nice little chat with them. On the other hand, Red Chaika finally teams up with Toru and Akari. In the final moments of the anime series, Toru takes Chaika to a peach tree. Now that they're together, they stare into the abyss as nothing can take them apart no longer.